Yat my name is Olivia Trujillo. I am a member of the Diné Nation. Ashihin Ishlin, Titsakani Bashichin, Kia Ani Dashiche Dobit Ahni Dashanele. On behalf of the Johns Hopkins Center for American Indian Health, we would like to welcome you to today's keynote address, Indigenous Lessons for the World, Traditional Perspectives on the COVID-19 Pandemic and Climate Change. This is the fourth and final event of the Native American Heritage Month series hosted by the Johns Hopkins Center for American Indian Health. We're grateful to celebrate the rich and diverse cultures, traditions, and histories, and to acknowledge the important contributions of Native people. I would now like to open the event with a prayer. So if you would please bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for bringing us together today. We come to you asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this event. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion and have a good time with one another in this virtual space. Continue to be with us throughout the day and every day. In your name I pray, amen.
Yeah.
And now I would like to open up again with a land acknowledgement. We humbly acknowledge that Johns Hopkins University is located on the traditional and contemporary homelands of Indigenous peoples. Our campus resides on unceded lands of the Piscataway and Susquehannock peoples. We recognize the enduring presence of more than 7,000 Indigenous peoples in Baltimore City, including Piscataway, Lumbee, and Eastern Band of Cherokee community members. As we gather together virtually from across the country, we acknowledge the Indigenous peoples of our homelands. We are all on Native land. Together, we acknowledge the history of genocide and ongoing systemic inequities while respecting treaties made on this territory as a step towards reconciliation and strengthening relationships with Indigenous peoples. We give thanks to the past, present, and future stewards of this land and respect all tribal nations' sovereignty and right to self-determination. We aim to hold ourselves and the university community accountable to tribal nations. Thank you. And now moving on, I feel like we're going to give you a little bit of logistics of how this event is going to work out. This event is currently in webinar format, so everybody is muted and your cameras are off. There will be a Q&A session at the end of this event, so please feel free to utilize the chat and the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. The questions will be monitored, but we'll have them answered at the end of the presentation. I would now like to introduce Kaylina Bray, a member of the Seneca Nation. She has spent her career working to strengthen the role of Indigenous and Native knowledge systems to address social, environmental, and economic systemic challenges on a global scale. Kaylina's research and work are focused on educating, raising public awareness, and strengthening vital links between food systems and biocultural health. She is currently pursuing a Doctor of Public Health at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. So thank you so much, Kaylina, for being with us today. I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you, Olivia. Greetings to you all. I'm glad that you are well. And a big thank you to the Center for American Indian Health for hosting this event today. I can't express how honored I feel to be able to introduce our speakers today, Thomas Banyacya Jr. and Oren Lyons. Oren joined us last year for the keynote, and we're bringing him back. And both of these leaders have been personal inspiration for me in my life and in my career. And what brings these leaders together really are the messages that are carried, the messages around peace and the messages for the world. And it's why we are here today and what we're here to learn and discuss. By way of introduction, Oren is a faith keeper of the Turtle Clan of the Onondaga Nation. He has an honorary Doctor of Law at Syracuse University, which is his alma mater. He's an artist and a lifelong lacrosse player. And I can't express, Oren, how grateful I am to be in conversation with you today. He's been a major figure of Indigenous peoples movement and at a young age has been articulating these messages of peace as a runner for the Confederacy, as does now his son Rex Lyons. And really, Oren and Thomas have both reached these global stages, for many years connected through the work with the UN to carry these messages from Geneva to Rio to New York, and really what's a call to action. And this connection between the Hopi and the Haudenosaunee carrying these messages goes back to Thomas's father, late Thomas Banyacya Sr., who was a Hopi messenger, and he's one of 4 men to carry the Hopi prophecies. And now Thomas Banyacya Jr. continues to bring these messages over 20 to 30 years, meeting at UN meetings. And you know, we're here today because things have not changed. And you know, it's why we have to have these dialogues, and personally listening to these messages has been the source of inspiration for the work that I continue to do and that many continue to carry forward. And in way of introduction to Thomas Banyacya Jr. is Hopi from Kikutsmovie. I hope I said that right. And Thomas is also a beautiful artist and creates incredible jewelry. And we've met through the work that I've done with Corn, and had the honor really to travel and visit and meet Thomas in his homeland with a dear friend and colleague from the Culture Conservancy, Mateo. And we discuss a lot of the very things we're going to be talking about today. And it's a lot to do with peace, with healing, with understanding why we're here today, and maybe think about what we need to do to move forward and heal. And these messages have stuck with me, and I'm very much looking forward to being in discussion with both of you around these very important issues. You've touched so many lives across the world, and we are really at a time in our lives where we must listen to these messages. And today we're here to have that conversation. We're here to have a dialogue, to bring awareness about some of these very pressing, important issues, which I think, you know, given the time we're in now, has woken a spirit in a lot of people. And it has brought in within me a spirit as well, brought within the spirit of the center, and why this event is happening, to really bring these messages to the forefront, and thinking about how we can all apply our knowledge to help, you know, to help heal. So the way that we're going to structure this day is to have a conversation. It's to have a dialogue. So it'll be with Oren, Thomas, and myself. And we will be taking Q&A as we go through some of the messages and the dialogue that we're having. So I wanted to begin because I think there's a really important understanding that comes from the perspectives and history of these messages being passed down, and really looking at the history of the Six Nations, Haudenosaunee, and the Hopi, and how seeing this time of change, I'm really interested to understand the story of this message of peace that you've been carrying. And this is for you, Oren, that can help us understand how we can really come back into balance with our original instructions.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to greet Thomas. How are you, Thomas?
Doing good. And yourself?
I haven't seen you in a long time.
I know.
I'm so glad to be able to see you again, see that you're good and healthy.
I'm glad to see you're still up and kicking and making
so
everybody run.
One day at a time. So anyway, the parameters you just discussed are very broad and very wide. You know, it requires a lot more time than an hour and a half. But you know, very quickly, the Haudenosaunee is a confederation of 6 nations, and probably the first confederation, maybe 1,600 years ago, it came together 5 original nations and formed a confederacy that is based on peace. the first principle was peace. And the spiritual advisor, the spiritual entity, we call him, we don't use his name. We call him the peacemaker, the great peacemaker. He instructed us that he said that he will return when things are really needed, and that we shouldn't use his name so that when we do call him, he will be able to hear it. So that's kind of a safeguard that we have. And the Haudenosaunee is like I say, very old. Nobody knows exactly the date when it all started, but it was way back at least 1500, 1600 years ago. And it was brought together by a spiritual leader. Came from the northeast part of the what is now called Lake Ontario, and landed among the Mohawks. And it's a long story of how he gathered us all up and eventually created what we call the Haudenosaunee, people of the Long House. And he said this confederation will be based on principles of peace and the equity, the fairness to everyone to be equal, and also the foundational principle of unity, to be united, one mind, one heart, one spirit, one body, and he instructed us that he said that at that time that the earth was a female, the earth is mother, as we all know, and that's how we greet the earth every day, mother. And he said, therefore, he said, the lineage of the new Confederation of Peace will be based on the women's side. They will follow the women's side. And so it's a matrilineal system that we have. And I've noted in my travels as I learned and moved about the country with the Native nations that many, many nations have the same position of matrilineal lineage. And so when a girl is born, you have a landowner, and when a guy is born, you have a lacrosse player, and whatever. But it was interesting to note that 1600 years ago, the relationship between men and women were equal, and not only equal, but the governance is also, that was given to us, is also delineated between the men and the women. They work together as partners, as men and women are down through life. You're a partner, man and woman. And so long ago, way before this past 500 years, we had a union based on peace. And the peacemaker said, I'm going to give you this symbol, a great tree of peace. So he set up this symbol, great white pine. He said it will have four white roots of peace that go in the four cardinals, the directions of the earth. And so that's a big idea, because the earth is round. And eventually those four directions would unite again at the bottom. It's a big idea about peace for the whole world. That's what he's talking about, the white roots of peace, of the great tree. These symbols are great, and on top of that tree, he placed the eagle, and he said this vigilant most powerful of all the birds, flies the closest to the Creator, carries a message, carries messages for us. And so I noted that across the nation, there's a great reverence for the eagle, and not only that, but also for the nature, what you call nature, which we call our relatives. And he established at that time families, and these families were based on our native, our animal friends. And so he, for the Confederation, he said, he asked the leaders, he said, one by one, go out in the woods and tell me the first thing you see. And that's what they did. And I saw a beaver. He said, henceforth, that's your family. And so it was that we have the beaver, the wolf, the turtle, the snipe, we have the deer, the bear, we have the hawk, and the tall, the bird with the long legs that stands in the water, the heron, and there's one I'm lacking here for the moment, but there's 9 of these families. And I thought that was, as I thought about it in the course of my life, I thought that was amazing, great thing to do, to unite us directly with our relatives out there. So yes, my clan is a wolf. I'm a wolf. And that doesn't mean I can go out there and pat a wolf on the head. I wouldn't want to try to do that, but it symbolizes our relationship, and it tied us to the earth. And as I moved about across the country and I met other Indian nations, I saw that they had very similar ways of clan system, families based on the native. And then when I got to Hopi country and Navajo country, my goodness, they had all kinds of clans. They had for the clouds, they had anything that was amazing complexity of their clan system and how it relates directly to the earth. So with all this discussion, the point I'm making is that Indigenous peoples understand and value that relationship directly to the earth. We are part of it. We're not in charge of it, but we're the one animal with intellect. And so we have this intellect, which is a great responsibility. And this responsibility is to take care of this vast Mother Earth that we call a mother. And so that's just the base of our foundational thinking. And what I found as I traveled, that this was a very common process across Indian nations, the relationship to the earth. And so at great gatherings, when we have many Indian nations and many leaders and peoples, one of our people will open up the session and they will speak on our behalf. And what I found out was that even though we didn't understand the language itself, we knew exactly what they were saying, and we knew what they were. It was just common. We're all related, and we're all relative to it. We know that. So, so any speaker, and indigenous nations can speak for all of us and do. And when we went to Geneva in 1977, which was an amazing event, we met our brothers and sisters from Central and South America. And we had one day to meet together, and one day to meet and greet, one day to meet politically, and the third day to present to the world. And you can imagine all the Indian nations from North, Central, and South America and North America, all in one place, and we're going to have one speaker for all of us. Well, we did that because we have a common understanding, even though the language was different, even though it was, but the foundational principles of how we live and what our beliefs are was all the same. So it's a broad perspective.
Wow. No, I think that message is, I mean, those fundamental understandings that kind of thread a lot of nations together is, I think, comes back to that perspective around being a relative, being part of understanding that relationship with Earth and with, I mean, that it's not apart from us, something that it seems that stands out when you're telling that story too. Yeah, and wondering too, Thomas, have you, with the work at the UN that you've been a part of too, how you see those common understandings or what it is that is so fundamental to the way of relating to us, to Earth, to the world around us. Basically, it's a different, it feels like a different perspective and different understanding that's become very disconnected with the way that we're seeing the way that our behaviors are coming out today, and wondering how you see that.
Well, it's good to have Oren here, listening to him again. And I traveled a lot in the past and had the opportunity at some sequence to travel with Philip Deere from Oklahoma, Muskogee. And he also traveled and had a similar understanding, feeling Oren talked about of corn and people and clans and relationships and priorities. And he traveled and spoke all over the world, and I was asked to accompany him to a trip to Europe, and met him in New York. And on our flight over, I asked Philip, I said, what are we supposed to do over there? And he says, Tom, he said, let me tell you this. He said, we're supposed to be intelligent. He said, and he says, let me tell you this. He said, there was a plane flying that was damaged and had an engine trouble and was going down. He said, and he said, there were 5 people on the plane. He said, there was the president, Jimmy Carter, there was Henry Kissinger, there was the pilot, a priest, and a hippie. And they were flying, and they had 4 parachutes on the plane. And so the pilot says, I have to fly the president around. So he grabs a parachute and jumps out. Jimmy Carter says, I'm the president of the United States, and I have to lead my people. So he grabs the parachute and jumps out. Henry Kissinger says, I'm the most intelligent man in the world. So he jumps out. And then the priest looks at the hippie and says, you take the last parachute because I'm the man of the cloth, and when I die, I'll go to heaven. The hippie looks back at the priest and says, no, father. He said, we can both jump because the most intelligent man in the world just jumped out of the plane with my backpack. He says, so so I was like, we're supposed to be intelligent, he said, when we go over. So I said, what does that mean? He said, well, we're supposed to give people an idea that since we have survived a long time, in spite of everything that has been done to us, we have to go out and show that we still have the energy, the understanding to apply our idea that we need to still bring an idea of how we keep our lands, our people safe and secure, and how to understand that we can be safe and have peace. He said. So we're supposed to do it and be intelligent about how we try to do it, and then share that with people. And that's what he told us. So we were supposed to be intelligent, but maintain our perspective that we've always had for thousands of years, and take care of that perspective, and apply it and show people that we are still alive and willing to work toward that idea. So that's what we need to project. So out here in the Hopi, we have 13 villages. We have 4 dialects of Hopi, including Tewa from the New Mexico area, tribal areas. And we all have villages that are autonomous. Everyone works together, but everybody remains separate under, as Oren described, a very under a system that's monitored by ceremony, and also by the understanding that land and the clans belong together, and that you are born into your clan. So the clan mothers are the ones responsible for the lands. And in Oren's case, when a male is born, they become a lacrosse player. And in our area, then when the male is born, he becomes a very good farmer. And that's how it's maintained in ceremony and understandings that most Indians and also indigenous peoples from every place in the world that are centered in their own areas have that same perspective. The only difference that I've seen is that foods are different, the languages are different, but people are the same. So we need to look at what the similarities are in people to bridge those gaps that give large discrepancies between economies, between how technology is used, and applications and new methods to do things that need to be shared and understood from the past. So I spoke to Kaylina earlier and felt that Oren is the main tie, or one of our better ties, to a history from that he learned from his father. I learned things from my father. Kaylina learned stuff from her father, and Oren learned stuff from his father. So what I would like to have a little more information, or just things from Oren, is how he arrived at what he's doing from stuff that happened 100 years ago during his father's period in that area, which is not in the history books, and it's not what you learn in school. But since he grew up since Oren's father grew up more than say 100 years ago in that same area, then it's the same. I know what happened in our area 100 years ago from my grandfathers and stuff, but I do not know what happened and how the two systems were made to react 150 years ago to make things happen the way they are now. So maybe Oren can bring light to stuff that He was instructed from those ones that are his father's age group from that area.
You know, we grew up hunting, fishing. We're living in the woods and picking berries and picking things that grow out there in the woods. We knew what to pick. We knew when to pick it, and we knew just it was just sort of common language. And as a young kids, 7, 8, 9 years old, running around in the woods, which we always did. We never walked on the road. We always went to the water. We always went to the creeks. We always went where the water was, and we're in the woods. And we didn't have to go home for lunch because we could find what to eat there. We knew how to do that. Just was common knowledge. It wasn't anything special, or our people have been doing that forever, I guess. And it was just, you learn that by watching other people and being around, as he mentioned, the father and then the mother, and watching what they're doing. And so our instructions were never done in a classroom. Our instructions were as you move along day by day, you learn and so forth. And there is a lot to know, a lot to learn. But the politics that come forward, and which is probably the ruling systems in the world, the political systems in the world today, always has been part of a human existence. So that's where the clan systems come from. You learn who you are. We didn't have schools. We didn't have teachers or schools. Everybody was a teacher, all the adults, and you just watched what they did, and you learned very, very quickly. And then you learned just by trial and error also. But it was a method of pretty good survival. I didn't realize that the general public of the Onondaga Nation would be what you call poor. People would call us poor, from outside looking at our Indian territory, but we never thought ourselves of being poor. That wasn't just, never even thought about it. We knew about being hungry. We knew all about that. I've been hungry many times. And we knew how to find something to eat. Those were just really common knowledge that today's generations, and particularly of our brother from across the water, he doesn't know. He's lost that relationship with what survives, which provides our survival, and it moved into a different atmosphere. And so it's two different worlds that are here, we live in. But in reality, there is only one world. In reality, there is only one law. And that's nature's rules and laws. And if you don't abide those rules and laws, you're not gonna last. That's simple as that. And so that's, I think, the gist of why we're having this discussion today is to kind of transmit to the powers of our brothers from across the water what they brought here, and to expand their perceptions into the spiritual side of the world that we live in. and this what you call nature, which is actually all of us. We're all part of nature. We are nature. But somehow or other, over a period of time, the Western people from across the sea, they developed they've developed money, and that is really what has taken over the whole earth. That concept. Not everybody has money, but the concept has brought where it is today. And our people didn't value that. We didn't value possessions as much as we valued relationship. We relate to one another better, really close relationship. I grew up with nicknames. We had nicknames for one another. And it's just a different way of looking at it and being. And these names that we developed or came about by some incident that was funny or it was something in our lives that happened just to the two of us. And so I have names for individuals, which is different from everybody else's. And we will greet each other that way sometimes, And people will laugh because they know something was between that greeting and the
So,
greeting.
Oren, let me interrupt you. So in all my travel and doing different projects and doing different things with you guys and places, then they used to refer to me as the RMIC. It was the resident manager, Indian in charge, because I was doing stuff. But now I want to pass that on to you because you're the resident manager, Indian chief. Okay. And when they ask you what you're chief of, you're the chief CEO, you're chief financial officer, you're the chief person involved in something. So now you can just be the R. When they ask you what you are, just tell them you're the RMIC, you're the resident manager, Indian in charge, or whatever.
Well, the terminology we use here at Onondaga is a runner. I'm a runner for the nation. Something's going on over there. You go over there and you take care of that. that would be, and we get the instructions are coming from the council. The instructions are coming from the people. And then, of course, our brothers and sisters from other nations, they recognize that work. There's individuals like yourself, Thomas, that get out and have to move and are more active than most people, but they're simply runners for the nation. They come back with the news. We come back, we explain what happened, and we inform, and then something will happen. And my particular role with the Haudenosaunee is because I went to a university and I learned my brother's language a lot better than my own, actually, that they said, you can understand what he's saying. They said, so you go and you talk to him and so forth. So I would get these instructions, and people get the misconception that I was this, know-it-all person. Basically, I'm a runner for the council, runner for the elders, and runner for the people. And it was very interesting. I mean, I made a choice way back to leave. I was going to be a commercial artist. I was working in New York City. I was already on my way as a career in art, and I was asked to come home, and I was asked to take this job, which I did. And I gave up the art world. I gave that up, and I became a runner for the nation. And that took me a lot of places. It took me around the world, actually. So the experiences that I've learned, I have no regrets whatsoever. I learned a lot, and what, you know, you get to be my age and you understand that there's so much you don't know. You know, you just realize how much you don't know yet, you know, and then of course, I don't know how many times I sat there and thought to myself, gee, I should have been listening to what they told me. I should have, you know, as a kid, some of you get instructions and you don't pay attention to it. 40 years later, you're trying to remember what it was they were telling you because now it becomes relevant, you know. And so, as Thomas pointed out, I have been running for not only the Haudenosaunee, but other Indian nations as well. As I took on this job, I agreed with the clan mother to be one of the chiefs, sub-chiefs, basically. I'm not a principal chief. And sit in the council, a council for the welfare of the people and the welfare of the earth. And I learned, you know, they said that your responsibility is not just people. Your responsibility is to the land. Your responsibility is to the trees, it's to the animals, it's to the fish, it's to the birds. You are responsible for their well-being, and you are responsible to do the best you can to maintain their way of life as well. And I learned that, and so then I become aware that our clan systems, then that's why we're beavers, and that's why we're wolves, and that's why we're whatever, you know. Or you go out to the West Coast and the ravens, and then they talk about the fish nation, but always related to the earth. And so one of the reasons why we're speaking today, it's just having this kind of general conversation, is we're in a very serious situation. And the serious situation that we're in is that we have overpopulated the earth. And I keep track of things, you know, just one of my nature, I just keep track of things. But the population of the earth, human population of the earth in 1950, and I was 20 years old, 1950. And the population of the earth was roughly 2.5 billion people. And it took thousands of years to get to that number, 2.5 billion. Now here we are 70 years later, and we have close to 8 billion. Close to 8 billion people. Triple the population of the earth in one lifetime. That's not sustainable. You can't do that. I mean, you can do that. We did do it. Here it is, but it's not a good idea because of the land, because of the water. Water is not adjudicated fairly. Some nations have hardly any water. And here in the northeast of the United States, we got the Great Lakes, almost a third of the water of the whole world right here in the Great Lakes. That's how much water we have. And then we have nations in the Middle East that don't have any water. The River Jordan is down 2/3. It's a mud puddle, the Jordan River. And how many people living off that water? That is serious, and that becomes a population. So we've just exploded. The population's just exploded, and water is not adjudicated fairly. Our resources, some have more than others. Some are just very fortunate where they are. And so we're facing now, I would say, an existential crisis for our existence as human beings. If we don't adjust to this and change our directions, we're just going to continue on into oblivion, bad times. And I know that the Hopi Nation and have these prophecies. The Hopis have these prophecies. The Haudenosaunee have these prophecies. The Lakotas have their prophecies. All of the Indian nations have these prophecies. And pretty much right on time right now, what they said was going to happen. And here we are, and it's happening. I would say we are now living in the time of the prophecies. So it's very important that humanity changes direction, that we adjust our way of life so that future generations will have what we have today. And that was been the prerequisite of all of our instructions. Take care of the earth for 7 generations, so that when their time comes, they're going to have the same thing that you had. You're going to have, because you protected that, you defended it. And you'll find that instructions with all the Indian nations. It's right there. They in the prayers, you know. It's in it, and the prayers are important. I remember Thomas Senior. You know, I worked with him a lot, and he was always in prayer. He was always, you know, all the time, during the day, you know, and our people do that. Our people are that way, you know. We're always in contact. We're always in connection with the spiritual side every day, all day, many times a day. And that's really a very powerful relationship and an anchor. Keeps you in a safe place. Unfortunately, I don't think everybody believes that way, and so we're in a serious problem now. And the population headed towards 8 billion very fast. You know, as we're sitting here, the population is exploding. So we're in an existential crisis, I think, of values. The values that are in our Indian nations now. I've got this request. They said, you Indians know a lot now. You got to help us out here. This guy was telling me, you know, you got to help us out. You know a lot. And I said, well, if you get your goddamn knee off my neck, maybe I can help you. You know, and because that's exactly what they've done to our people. They put their knee on our neck. And now we're suffering a consequence of that. But our people never gave up. They never gave up the relationship. They never gave up the prayers. And the languages are so important. And that keeps us, you know, our histories, our very being is in the languages. And I'm lacking sorely on that issue, but I've been so busy just doing the political side of stuff, running, so forth, that just managing this all. But what I saw here now at Onondaga is that we have our council has come back to full literacy. They speak language. It's coming back strong now. But you have to work at it. You have to really work at it, because therein is the principles that will secure a better future for human beings. you know, and so it's common cause now. You know, we're all relatives, whether you're white, yellow, red, or black. We come in all colors, but we're all human beings. We're all relatives. We're related very closely. We can change blood, and you can't get any closer than that. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you have a bad accident and you need some blood, and they have it, and they give you that blood. Or who it came from doesn't matter. But there could have been a black person, could have been a yellow person, could have been a white person. Same blood. So we're one family. We're basically a family, and we're not doing that good. We're in a serious situation now, but it's not over. You know, I mean, we're in that situation, and now we have to get back to the principles that they were asking us about. I tell them, get your knee off our neck, we can help you. But, you know, they destroyed our languages. They put children in boarding schools. They took the language away from them. And now they're asking for help from that language. And that's something.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I feel like there's always the question of that. I also feel like that I hear a lot is how to regain that type of connection that, you know, is so fundamental to the understandings of the original instructions and that have been passed down through language. And how is that, you know, connection, can that be something that is regained with, you know, someone who isn't brought up in that way of thinking? I mean, there's building alliances around how we now move forward in this mess that we've gotten into. It feels like I hear a lot of question about how to do that. And I have questions, and it's, as you know, as a younger generation, it feels very overwhelming to think about where we are and the systems in place that make it so difficult to you know, to change how both the economic system is set up, but it's how we're treating the environment. I mean, it all feels connected, and it all feels entangled, and it feels really like a big, you know, we're facing this or on a precipice. And so now what do we do? How can we begin to untangle? And what are the possibilities there? Just makes me reflect on some of these questions I've been harboring over the years too. And I feel like, Thomas, this reminds me of a conversation we had when I came out to visit you. I feel like I was in a moment there too, where I felt kind of lost around what can you do? What can we do as, you know, native, non-native? You know, how can
The main thing that Thomas's dad would always instruct us, and he always said that, well, it's in the ceremonies, keep your ceremonies and keep your language and keep your relationship with the spiritual side of things. And the ceremonies are really foundational. I think it's kept the Haudenosaunee together, and I know it's kept other Indian nations together. They do the ceremonies. They've managed to keep that in spite of that very strong effort to destroy all of that. They wanted to just take it right out and destroy it. But we've managed to hang on to those ceremonies. And that's your spiritual relationship to the whole universe. And so that's why it's foundational to keep those ceremonies. That's number one. And I know the Hopis have done that good, and the Pueblos too. You know, there's a mixture of Christianity and so forth. But one time I was talking to somebody, elder, and eventually he said, you know, there's no Christians here. the cover that keep the ceremonies. Now, Christianity has a lot to answer for. What they did to our people. It's not been answered for what they did. They came over, and the genocide that was visited on Indian nations has not been addressed yet. I mean, hundreds of millions of people have been killed in the name of peace, in the name of Christianity. And that has to be addressed. That has to be addressed. And so now I see it happening. I see the recognition coming. But in the contemporary world, in the secular world that goes on every day, the problem is between the values of principles of peace and love and ceremony, and the value of money. And the value of money is really winning out over the day. The commerce of the world is what drives everything. And so it's a battle between common sense and dollars and cents. The two don't go together. I mean, they will throw aside common sense for dollars and cents. And that's brought us to this position now. There we are. So I'll just make one more statement, because we met Thomas. You know, I was invited to a meeting in London by a group of people that were organizing for good. And I asked, can I bring an elder? And they said, yes. So I asked Thomas, I said, can you come with me? We'll go to England and talk to these people. Sure. So, you know, and so off we went. And there were good people there. On the dais, the Dalai Lama was sitting there. Mother Teresa was sitting there. Akio Matsumura, who was a principal speaker and also I guess you'd call him the CEO of the event from Japan. He was presiding, but he knew everybody. And there were the Grand Muftis. There were people from the Sufis. They were all there. It was a great meeting, amazing. And so Thomas and I added our 2 cents to it. Not much, you know, pretty much the same way, but it was the spiritual and parliamentary leaders for human survival. That's what they called themselves. Al Gore was there. And it was being chaired by the president of Russia. That's an amazing group of people there. And they were in it for the common cause of human survival. Spiritual side of stuff was amazing. And that went on. And I'll just say that we were in meeting in Japan in 1990. And we were over there in 88. And so we met in Russia, we met all over the place. And we were in Japan, 1990, had all these great minds together. And I said to Akio, Akio, how many more times we're going to meet? Can we come to a conclusion? Yeah, he said, that's a good idea. I'll ask the assembly. So he put that question to the assembly. He said, you know, we've been meeting and we've had discussions in different parts of the world, and we're on the common cause. Can we have a conclusion? Can we work to a final statement? And they accepted the challenge. And that was a week-long meeting. And at the end, they had a statement. That's it. We've come to a conclusion. Good. What is it? There was 4 words. After all those meetings, all those countries, all those discussions came down to 4 words. Value change for survival. They said, if you don't change our values, if we don't change our values, we're not going to survive. So we have to value change for survival was the last words. Value change for survival. Which means this is simply what it says. You have to change your values from the monetary systems that we have today to the spiritual side, which we've always been saying, and which we've managed to hold on to. And Hopi Nation has been really foundational in that direction. They were, Thomas, his dad spent prison time in jail because he refused to go to war. He said, no, that's not what we do. We said, Hopi means peace. Hopi word means peace. He refused to go to war. He went to prison years. People don't know that. But on principle, you hold that principle. No? So value change for survival then. We have to change our values to survive. It has to move to the spiritual side, away from the monetary side. It's a challenge. So you're talking about corporations now. They just had a meeting in COP26, and some countries didn't even go. The leaders of Russia did not go.
Yeah.
The leaders of China did not go. Now, how are you going to come to a universal declaration of peace and love in the world if they don't all show up?
Yeah, or agree to common language. Yeah, it's frustrating. It feels that. How can we come to that without having nations who are some of the biggest, part of this equation, not willing to be there? I don't know, it brings me back to that economic piece too. How does that play into the change that needs to happen? And yeah, I wanted to ask that to you, Thomas. And that was, thank you, Oren, for all of that sharing. But that's something that always, I carry these messages and think of them often too. Just want to say that. And for Thomas, wondering what you think too about some of the ideas around the shift that needs to take place in values in terms of the way we think economically, but then what the role of the spirit and ceremony is in that change, how you see that.
Well, like Oren just mentioned, it's always been inside or with the Hopi to do maintenance of secular and non-secular worlds together. And because they work together. And the basic principle that we are responsible for not only helping the physical world, but in the maintenance of the metaphysical world, in feeding and encouraging energies that are out there that we can't see, to feed them, to acknowledge them, because they need acknowledgement too, because they have feelings, they have things, So in us feeding them, understanding them, helping them help us, the spiritual world. We can do that. But in our present situation, I think the best case scenario would be for the Indian people, Indian nations, to begin rebuilding our trade routes that we had before a lot of this happened, that increased our survivability quotient by trading goods, giving each other access to materials that they could use, combine it with stuff in their areas and produce things. And we can patch and with as many Indian nations as we have, we should have a very strong trade group bloc that would be able to support a lot of the work that's needed to bring our different tribal communities, people back to their own understandings of what different people need, different ways of increasing their survivability, and that needs to be done within individual tribal areas with individual people, but they all need to survive and economically survive, and we do need to produce our own economic efforts as Indians, and by doing more trade relations where it does not involve money but exchange of materials, goods, and things that increases people's ability to be home and produce more from home. And I think that's one area that hasn't been opened too much yet, is a very strong, good trade relationship. Because every Indian group has different materials and minerals and things in their own areas that would be useful to other people, other tribal groups to, and coming in, and you could ship logs to one area to have it made into something else to send down the line to another tribe to do, and then have it sent to tribes on both sides of the country so that can be finished and sold or sent back and put back into the Indian community. So I think one small step would be to broaden and produce an Indian, not just in America, because we were here before borders. So it'd have to go to North and South America, all over, so we can have our trade relations again, which is the basis of our migrations and understandings that we had previous to the comings of other foreign people. We can reassert our own tribal sovereignties and strengths by doing a very good, strong trade relationship with groups everywhere.
It's a good idea. I think we used to do that. I mean, everybody used to trade, They found Six Nation wampum belts over in California.
Oh, wow.
And Alaska, and those coast Indians, they had those big canoes, and they would move up and down. There was a lot of that exchange and trade going on all the time. It wasn't an accruement of a lot of stuff. It was just simply trading one for the other. We didn't have a national bank. There was no such thing as a national bank. But the values was, like for instance, the shirt I'm wearing today, take a look at.
Yeah.
I like this shirt. I wear it all the time. It's one of my favorite shirts. It's Seminole. Seminole.
Yeah.
Now, created on one of my shirts for that. So down there in some little country, somebody's wearing, and that's what we used to do. We used to do that all the time, you know? And it's true. We simplify our lives back again. It's not an accruement of wealth, which is what's occurring with our brothers from across the water. They accrue wealth, you know, and it just wasn't the way we thought at all. It was really different. Ours was more relationship, more daily life, and working with the seasons. They asked us, one time I was asked a question by, I think it was, I was at a university somewhere or somebody, and somebody said to me, well, the Onondaga Nation, what's your bottom line? And it stopped me cold. I said, I don't know. I said, I don't know. What's my bottom line? I looked at him and I said, I don't know. I can't answer that. I said, I'll have to think about it before I try to find it. It's an interesting question. And I did think about it. And it took me some time. And I said, at the end, I said, we don't have a bottom line. That's why I didn't know what it was. I said, we live in a cycle. Spring, summer, fall, winter, spring, summer, fall, winter. And all our ceremonies follow that. All the way around. Every year we start over again, coming back. And so those ceremonial songs are old. They're old. And people love those songs. And they love those ceremonies. And they, you know, and we do it again and again and again. So we live in a cycle like the earth itself. We're in that cycle. So the bottom line is what's in a bank account. There you have it. What's your bottom line? And that's a major question amongst all the nations of the world, this bottom line business. And look where it brought us now. We're facing an existential crisis of survival as a species.
Well, Oren, you know, I understand that, I was brought to understand anyway, that in the Hopi, we don't have a word in our language for that's used as a present tense. We only have a past and a future in the language. And in the application is that we understand that time, like anything, does not stop and it continues. So there's no, since it doesn't stop, there is no present tense, you know, that can stop. Everything we do is either in the past or in the future. So the bottom line again is that since time doesn't stop, like the banks stop time, they take your money and they hold it for 24 hours to get more interest before they give it to you. Something. Time stops when you don't have that money because you can't spend it because it's not in your hands. But if you can understand that the system has its idiosyncratic wrong ways of doing things, that we need to just know that those are wrong. And that since time doesn't stop, we can just think about doing things in the future and don't have to stop to wait for things. We can just start to do things and keep doing it because we know we don't have to stop. Because time doesn't stop. So we shouldn't stop either. We should just keep doing what we're doing.
Well,
And if training, instructing young ones. And I always tell people, we need to instruct the young ones how we destroyed this land, because we're the ones that did it.
Yeah.
And how we grew up, how we were raised. And we don't know how to correct it because we were never given that instruction by anyone how to correct stuff we destroyed. So we need to be able to just move, but also decide that we're not going to do those things again, so we can give more time to creating better avenues or ways that we can interact that were most useful and most morally, ethically correct between just tribal groups, and start with that. Build a trade relationship and work toward that. Always keeping our system ceremonies intact and not jeopardize that, but move on to working together again. Because we've been divided for a long time.
That's true. That's true. We need to get back together. There's always been these great confederacies across the Turtle Island of nations gathering up in circles. They always had these, and they always had to trade. That's how come stuff ends up over here. That's how come I got this Seminole shirt on, coming from Florida. But that stuff goes all around the world, So we are in a crisis, and it's a very difficult one because of the number of people, and a very difficult one because of the value systems that are prevailing now around the world. And when you think of 7 generations, I mean, that instruction the peacemaker gave to our leaders way back 1600 years ago, he said, when you sit and you counsel for the welfare of the people, think not of yourself, nor of your family, nor even your generation, he said. Make your decisions on behalf of those 7 generations, those people for the future, those faces looking up from the earth. Make your decisions on their behalf, so they'll have the same thing that you have today. That was the instruction. And then when I see the systems that are around the world today, they're going the opposite way. They're going down to the millisecond that happens in Wall Street. Where they write down how fast can you do this? How fast? They're going in the opposite direction. And the long term is not in their thinking. And the consequence of that is you don't have a future, or you muddy the water. You're not looking out for the 7 generations. You're not looking out for the generations coming. You're worried about yourself and your own money.
Yeah, I feel like we're seeing that a lot too with COVID and a lot of divisiveness that it's caused, and there's this hate and fear that seems to be coming alongside of that. And wondering, this is a question too that is from the audience, but what your thoughts are around, it's causing a lot of division among community around these issues of the vaccine, and then it's causing, we've seen hardships mentally, physically for the health of our people, and it's what is going on around this? There's something that it's bringing out in people, it seems like, and that is instead of bringing us together, causing us to come apart and have that divisiveness. How do we? Just interested to hear your view on that. Maybe Thomas, you might.
Well, I think this pandemic has brought up a lot of things that have been undercover for a long time. And a lot of the virus itself is a natural, just a virus that came, and with the spread and the amount of travel that people do all over the world, made for a very fast, quick mover. This infection, and a thing that again I think is a miscommunication in how to deal with pandemics. And I know that in the Hopi, there was an induced pandemic of smallpox brought by blankets from when they were doing things back in the last part of the century, early part of this century. And that killed thousands of Hopi. But this one has still killed more than a few hundred probably. But the thing is that we need to just not politicize natural bugs and things that will attack, whether a Democrat or Republican, a parasite or this virus will attack you. It doesn't care. So we have to look at it from that point of view and eliminate any fear of how we react, and just concentrate on preventing the spread of it, and do it without the politics involved, without anybody's thought. Just understand that it is a very serious bug that kills people, and we need to share our resources and get everyone to the same level of getting vaccinated, of understanding what the vaccines do, how they affect people, and some are good, some are not good, and all that information needs to go out so people can relax, just do what they need to do to quiet this pandemic, so we can get on to thinking about other things that seriously need. Overpopulation, lack of water, all these other things that are human caused, not a natural cause by a virus. So we need to work in eliminating and slowing down the process of natural calamities, viruses, all these other events. We have volcanoes, we have all these other things that are happening too. And so, but the main important thing is just to understand that this is a fundamental parasitic virus that kills people, that can be made to back off with a proper vaccine. Understand that, and then move on to doing other things to combat the really serious things that are affecting people. Oren mentions. Because this is just one of many viruses that are out there that are doing a lot of damage to people. There's many different kinds, different strains of doing all different cancers, all different stuff. And this one's just taken hold because of the amount of publicity and also the amount of travel that that occurred when people moved and spread this disease all over, just because of, again, Oren's understanding of the population increase to the billions over 20, 30 years. And that's a very strong incentive to try to work and demystify and take away all the misinformation that's been generated about just health problems that are here today that need to be addressed in all different areas of the country, with all people, in all different nations. It's very uneven how it's applied, understandings, and So we need to just look at ourselves, our Indian tribal groups, and start with that, in helping making sure that there are things available to combat all these different kind of health issues that come up, and because they're constant, and people are always having to negotiate life with different viruses always. So I think just giving out most correct information about it, and like the Johns Hopkins contact tracing program that gives very good background information on how to analyze, how to look at this pandemic, how to cope with it. And that information needs to be broadened, and also it is very effective in addressing issues that people don't quite understand, but given instruction and this type of a small curriculum to learn how to deal with it is probably the best way to do it.
Yeah, no, I agree. Thank you for that. Yeah, we're right to the end of our time too. We have 2 minutes left.
To thank Oren for being who he is, and that he's in my mind the RM I see now, the resident manager, Indian in charge. So when he tells me stuff, I do it, because he always told me I was a runner anyway. So
Thank you.
so thank you, Oren, and you too, Kaylina.
Big thanks to you both, Oren, so good to see you, hear from you, Thomas.
Good. Yeah, got to make a trip down to Hopi yet.
I need to come up your way too.
Yeah, good. Always welcome.
We'll go fishing.
Good idea. Good idea.
Good idea.
Great. Ahyahet. Thank you, Oren and Thomas, for sharing your time and your knowledge with us today. And thank you, Kaylina, for guiding today's discussion. It was so great. We wish you all well, as well as our participants. Thank you so much for joining us today. Ahyahet. You guys all have a good day today. Bye.
Good luck to all of us.
Mhm.
Take care.
Say your prayers.